I'm an express builder. I love my sleep and I do prioritize it. But when I'm really loving what I do, I just love to work. It doesn't feel like work. And I could just do it all day, every day, 7 days a week. And the days that I'm not supposed to do it because I self-imposed a limitation that I'm actually taking an entire day off, I just end up studying human design instead and then consider it not work.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to BG5 Live, episode 32. So we'll continue with Banu. She is going to be with us today, as always, in this kind of stream. So we're looking at direction today. Before we do, I want to reach over to Vanessa. Vanessa, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here and excited about today's topic. And I wanted to welcome everybody to BG5 Live, the show for BG5 and human design professionals, students, and enthusiasts who want a deeper understanding of how to apply human design to business so that they can thrive in their career and support their clients in doing the same. So, welcome everybody who is here live. Welcome to everybody who is watching the replay. And we have another exciting session about OC16 today. And yeah,
I think this topic is going to be really interesting. So we're looking at the 214. So if you're not seeing it visually, so the 214 is from the sacral to the G, or the energy resource to the identity function. So Vanessa has it, Sarah has it. I
woohoo.
actually have the two. So Bono has plenty of kind of experiences. Bono, you don't have any of this at all.
No, but my conscious core essence and grounding and balance happen to be in that power base.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. So this should be filled with a lot of live experiences. So looking at the 0616, we're looking at direction, actually
Yep.
214. So, but anyway, if this is okay, I thought we'd do a little bit of looking at it from a personal design perspective, and then we can jump into the 0616. Does that sound
That
okay?
would be, yep, that would
All
be a
right.
great start.
Yeah. So we're starting off with the whole strength. Vanessa, maybe you should tap into this and give us some perspective. And if you want to just take a look at this and share anything that jumps out at you.
Yeah, so the 214, and I will read it because we do have listeners that listen without seeing the slides. So this is about direction. It's providing the energy and resources needed to empower a creative new direction. You can bring innovative and empowering new direction to people, projects, and the planet simply by listening to and trusting your gut response. So this is a generative strength. Anybody that has this is either a generator or a manifesting generator in traditional language, or a builder, classic builder, or express builder in EG5 language. You are able to sustain your own creative efforts or materially provide for and encourage others in their own creative direction. All individuality empowers through example. So your first task is to be true to yourself and live your own destiny, direction, and purpose. And when you trust that life will make decisions through you, you empower others in a purely mechanical way by giving them a sense of direction in just being around you.
Mm, nice. So, Vanessa, what's your experience, real life, having, have a deep understanding of it? Like, where does it show up in your work, your career?
So I naturally get pulled into helping people with direction, especially around resources. So I've always found this in companies that I've actually worked for, as well as clients that I have that are businesses, like really just naturally providing the direction to the resources that they have. It just is something that comes naturally. And I might not even have any idea or think about it. And one of my clients can come to me and ask me a question that relates to this, and just immediately the answer just comes right out. Um, there's no like having to necessarily think about it for long term or planning about it. The answer just comes out. And of course, I do have a heavily defined energy resource, or that's the sacral center for traditional human design language, which is also directly connected to my throat communication and action. So this all does tie in together. But yeah, the answers to, the direction that the resources need just come up immediately and come out immediately.
Yeah, nice sharing. So again, if you have the access to the visual of this, so Vanessa is an express builder, but she comes with this kind of whole host of different kind of strengths. She has a 3420, which is deeply individual, but she also has tribal. She has the 4037 community. And Vanessa does an amazing job of either finding or collecting or discovering different communities to be a part of. She's also really great at creating community. And I think she's just going to keep getting better and better at that. She also has in the tribal, the 2750, and then she has the experiential cycles. It's a format channel, which is about going through these experiences of beginnings, middles, and ends. So the reason I'm going into her design is we look at design from a kind of like more of the totality of it and just beginning to understand how all of these pieces fit together. When I look at Vanessa's design, it's like, whoa, there's a lot there. Now, on the other side, Sarah is also an express builder, but all of her strengths lie in this one particular circuit, which is individuality. It's kind of this knowing and empowerment. So I'd be curious to hear, Sarah, your perspective on your 214 and how it shows up in your work, career, or even running in the institutes.
Yeah, could you go back to that slide with some of the keynotes on there? Just it helps me stay focused. But like
Yeah,
Vanessa said, um, like the keynotes mentioned, it's like I just naturally get pulled into things. I mean, my whole life, especially large organizations, which is interesting. Like I can work really well in a small group, but it's very different working in a large group. And from even just a very young age, I was naturally pulled into youth organizations and naturally called out to be a leader in those organizations. And I excelled at it as well within a school when I worked in a very large district within a very short amount of time. And being a very new teacher, was called into a leadership position to shape the direction of the school. Um, and you could say the same for the Institute. It's not something that I was seeking out, it just naturally happened. I notice it as well with family and friends, as I'm just kind of sort of that natural person that people look to if they need to make big decisions. And if they just need, a sense of direction, like, where are we going as a group? Um, so yeah, it's one of my favorite things about me is my individuality, and it really starts with this 214, right? And it goes
it
all the way
does.
up.
Yeah.
So you could see why in large organizations I gravitate. It happens. I can't avoid it.
Yeah. So one of the things that Sarah is alluding to is the 214 is a really interesting strength in design because it can fit in so many different areas. So obviously it fits having the 214 for the individual, but it's also, as we've talked about before, it's also a penta strength. So a penta, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a small team or a small group of 3 to 5 people. But the 214 is actually the only one that also fits in an OC16 or a larger organization or a larger group, which is what Bono is going to be talking about. Before we do that, Bono, I'd love to hear your experience. So you don't have, even though you have a lot of the power base of the 214, you don't have that strength at all. You don't have the 2 or the 14. What's your experience of noticing people with this strength?
Yeah. So, in the more individual sense, I do gravitate towards people like in working in things. If people have a vision and if it's too big, right? The vision is so grand. Uh, and we don't know how to put resources behind it either, I could really help refine it in a way and come up with creative ways myself to support it in a way, because I carry some of that, the power base in an OC16, and was part of that circuitry. So I kind of work well with people in terms of bringing their vision to something more tangible and doable. Yes, that's what the 43 and 23 does, simplifying it in a way. So that's how I work in that sense. And in the more bigger, large organization sense, I've always been pulled into such projects. I was given extra tasks on top. I mainly did marketing and sales, but I was always part of planning. Like, let's say we're going to do yearly planning for next year. How is that going to happen? Because somebody needs to put structure into it, make it efficient, and make it simplified, because there's so many things to do. So I was always pulled into those things. And if you look at my power-based activations, it's the second highest. Innovation is my first. And then it's from a percentage wise, it's the highest in my design, meaning in such organizations, I would be pulled into these groups. Now we got to look, did that serve me being pulled into such groups, projects, other things that were not perhaps part of my job? Or sometimes it could really derail you, right? You can't do what you're supposed to do because you're pulled into these things. And in my experience, it's helped me being pulled into these things, because setting the vision, the direction, planning for next year, perhaps, these are usually managed by like the management tiers of organizations. So it gave me exposure to a lot of leaders within the organization, I think, being pulled into this power base myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can
Mm-hmm.
see where there's a really nice connection between the 4323 that you have and the 214. So Rod talked a lot about this idea of the 4323 having a dynamic relationship with 3420. So 3420s is what's considered quote unquote the pure express builder, because it goes directly from the energy resource motor right to the communication function. So it's this kind of pure expression. And so sometimes it moves so quick, the 4323s can help guide that in an efficient way. But I can also see the way you talked about it with the 214, this,
Yeah.
kind of bringing your life experience to make it even more efficient.
Yeah, and when we talk a little in more detail of how we look at it from an OC16 perspective, we look at the whole power base in terms of how an organization can bring that to life. I'll speak to it later when it's time, and we can have a deeper perspective into it. And it was like I didn't notice Sarah had the whole power base activation herself. That was very interesting for me. So
I'm a
maybe after
unicorn.
I speak to it from an OC16 perspective, then Sarah perhaps could relate to her time back when she was part of large organizations like schools or the youth groups she
Hmm.
spoke to, and see how that unfolded for her. I'm very interested to hear that. And Azadeh had a question, so maybe we go back because it was related to the first part, like the more personal application of things. If I could read it, Frank, maybe?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So her question was, what is the difference of trait 1 and 2? Both are creative. So I appreciate clarification on their differences, she said.
I can speak to it from my own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The one, both, so as the one of the things to understand about the two and the one. So they both live in what's called the individual circuitry. So individual circuitry are people who go through these kind of changes in life, and the changes show up sometimes very suddenly. So in the terms of creativity, the one is the one and the two mean that you naturally have a lot of creativity kind of in your life. It's a natural part of who you are. So the one kind of feeds that energy. We call it creative self-expression. Now, when you switch down to the two, it has a potential to be creative, but like Vanessa and Sarah were talking about, the creativity comes from more of which direction do we go to? Another piece of it is what's the vision for this project? What's the vision for our team? What's the vision for, this particular aspect of, a client's life? And with the two, you naturally feel that you can support and help people. Or another way to say it is to empower. So the one's creative, it's more creative self-expression, but you can empower other people to be more creative through your own creative process. You become an example. And the two is, again, you can help empower other people's vision through your kind of life experience. Does that help? I hope it does.
I also want to add that the one is part of both the creative and the leadership strength of the knowing thematic. And so that's also significant. It's creativity and leadership.
Yeah. If you have the 1/8, you're someone who's designed to play a leadership role by being a creative role model, but you lead by example, building on
And
what Vanessa said.
if I could add another layer, so when you look at the pentadynamics of a person and they happen to have the one or the two, they also morph into other meanings. The one, which is the creative self-expression, provides the sales functionality of that group, actually. So
Yeah.
in a penta, if somebody has the one, they would be inclined to sell the product or the idea or the service that we are speaking to. And then the two again stays like more like visionary, providing a vision to that whole group. Let's say it might be a small business or a team. So they differentiate in the penta as well.
Yeah, vision and direction. So we want to look at just the skill itself. So the driver, I'll take this one because I have it. So the driver connects to the 14. So you're the driver behind the wheel of your own life and can empower others with an inner sense of vision and direction. I would relate to that. You're someone who has and empowers others with the inner sense of vision and direction. I remember doing a lot of leadership training workshops and kind of programs in my younger years. And a lot of the times, a lot of the times we would meet with other participants and we would talk about our visions for like the programs we were designing or the programs we were leading. And I had this natural ability to help this other person see, oh, have you thought about this? Have you tried that? And that comes out of the two. Continue, and so you may find yourself directing others towards the resources they need to support their creative endeavors. So that finding the resources, that's the 14. And discover that by simply aligning with your own direction, you automatically empower or confirm in others their own sense of direction. You're a visionary providing the plan or overview for a new way forward. Now, here's the challenge just having the two is you don't have the 14, which means that you don't necessarily have the vision for carrying out, I mean, you don't have the energy to carry out that vision. That's been the bane of my existence, to have so many clear visions for things and not having the energy for it. It can be really challenging. And the 14, nope, the 14 here, power skills. Vanessa, I'm going to give you this one. Toss it back to you.
Okay, so this is the potential to empower the direction of others through the distribution of available resources. And somebody that has this has the potential energy to sustain long hours of creative work doing something you love, which I very much relate to. When you love what you do, you have the potential to generate great wealth and power. The resources you create or have access to are not necessarily for your own use, but rather yours to manage to empower others. To protect your valuable resources from misuse or abuse by others and to remain properly aligned to bring out the right mutative direction, be sure to follow your decision-making strategy. Your power skills are best utilized for growth and empowering direction, creativity, and vision.
So I know you've just talked about your 214 and having the whole strength. Can you differentiate out the 14 in action?
You know, it's interesting because both the 14 and the 34 are my future direction or my North Node in human design language. And I'm well past my Uranus opposition, that life stage where we move into that. And it's very clear to me, like, I can't necessarily differentiate, but I mean, I love to work when it's the work that I love. And I also have a defined willpower. So I'm, work and rest, work and rest. And so, I made this commitment to myself that Sundays was going to be a day off. And sometimes I wake up on Sundays and I'm like, ah, I'm not supposed to do any work today.
That's funny.
So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I can just like work round the clock. I mean, not round the clock. I'm an express builder. I love my sleep and I do prioritize it, but when I'm really loving what I do, I just love to work. It doesn't feel like work. And I could just do it all day, every day, 7 days a week. And the days that I'm not supposed to do it because I self-imposed a limitation that I'm actually taking an entire day off, I just end up studying human design instead and then consider it not work.
You know what's so interesting? Like, we talk about express builders and then people think, oh, we can just work, 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 work. So a little bit of a difference and just giving some context. Vanessa has all four motors in her design. All four. So like energetically, that's a powerhouse. But Sarah and I were both express builders, but she and I share this commonality, which is we only have, not only have, I mean, having the energy resources, it's a powerful motor, but it's not, for me at this point in my life, it's not just work, work, work. In fact, it's very selective. I don't know about you. How is it for you, Sarah?
I f- I feel like I need to be more selective sometimes. Like yeah. I mean, I think it's easy to say yes, but when it's something you love and especially something you care about, and for me, it's like a lot of what I do also comes from a place of service. Um, for me, it's almost like it turns off and on. So when it's on and I have the energy, I try to take full advantage of that and work as much as I can. I can get lost in a task um, when I'm just creating and loving what I do. But eventually it runs out. And then it's also interesting because, like, just considering the profile, I love to feed off of other people's energy and in a group, but then I'll also get super fatigued. So yeah, it's interesting only having that one motor. It's like sometimes it's like turned way up, and then other times it's like, okay, time to rest. So just listen to my body, you know?
Yeah. So, Sarah, you brought up a really good point, and I think it's might be helpful for people who are learning BG5 human design. So, Sarah just said something really interesting. She talked about it in terms of profile, or in BG5, we talk about it in terms of public role. The public role has this kind of job, which is how do you express your particular strengths? How do you, you know, express your different channels? So Sarah has the four in her conscious public role, which is she talked about it, which is she gets to express really well around other people, working with other people, having other people as part of her team. That really helps her. Myself on another side is I have a two. So I'm a 2-4. Someone who's very, very much very private in some ways, also very selective. So what I've noticed over the years of my human design BG5 experiment is as I get older, I get more and more and more selective, more narrow in what I respond to. That's just part of my design. So the second line profile is it wants to go deep as opposed to broad. It has, my friendship circle is I have 3 or 4 best friends, as opposed to someone like my sister who might have like 20 people in her network. Everything for me as a two is more narrow. And that corresponds with my response too. All right. I know Bonnie's like, where are you guys going with this? Let's come back to OC16. let's just give a little bit
When
of
you're in the
a
flow, that's what's meant to supposed to happen, right? So we
yes.
don't judge. I'm like, okay, we're
We
supposed to be
don't judge.
discussing this today, which is great.
So as far as the OC16 channels, strengths, we've covered management 45-21. We've covered competitiveness 25-51 and innovation, which was the 360. This week we're covering direction. And then in
Next week,
December,
interaction, because we did do logical enforcement,
we did do
I
that.
think. Yeah, I think we did. Yep.
No, we didn't. We did not do
We
it.
didn't?
Boris brought it up. It came up
Ah,
when we were
yes.
doing
Yeah, because it's
innovation.
such a big part of his design sometimes, it just and because it's
Yeah.
all connected, right? It's not like we isolate things when we talk, but in real life it's just like everything is happening at the same time and things tie together. All right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
So we haven't officially
Love
covered it
that.
yet, just
All right.
unofficially.
Okay.
unofficially. Yeah.
It's
So it's
the interaction and logical enforcement are really big power bases. So if you switch back to a power base, that 13, for example, slide 13 in your deck. Yeah, so as you see, some of the power bases are really small, covering that circuitry. Like direction is like after the channel itself, the main OC16 channel, we have 6 other traits. But if you look at logical enforcement and interaction, you will see that there are like very big power bases. Meaning, and it's the interaction and logical enforcement is where really the work gets done in an OC16 as well in an organization. So that's why they're really big. So spending more time on them, I think, is appropriate in a lot of ways.
yeah, interesting. I can't wait to hear the difference in those two power bases, the 2750 and the 59.6. So just as a kind of overall perspective, so today with the 214, our first and only show in December on December 9th, we'll be looking at logical enforcement. And then the final one will be in the new year, 2026, will be the 59.6, which I'm excited about because that's part of my design.
Mhm.
So Banu, I'm going to turn it over to you. What would be most helpful here? Start this line.
Yeah, this one, I like speaking to this slide because it's just very summarized in terms of looking at a slide while speaking to things. Yeah. So we have discussed the personal application of things and the way it kind of morphs into what happens in an OC16 and in a penta. So these are like, it kind of connects everything together, is setting the direction of the business and having that vision that we can plan for. So you will see like the color coding is we have the channel itself, the OC16 channel, the 14 is in one color, and then the power base is in the yellow. And it's because they're feeding, so the ones up top are actually feeding in to the 214, and that's how the vision gets the direction and connects to the rest of the company and kind of trickles down through the hierarchy of that organization. Because we're speaking about anything that's above 10 people is an OC16. And it's really talking about that creative potential. Yes. To direct where the competitiveness will be as well, because it kind of sets the group identity. And I'll try to give an example to speak to what I mean by that after I've covered the basics around this. Yeah. And then it also becomes the creative expression of the group because we as an organization we are making a contribution to our stakeholders, to the society as well. Yeah. So just to speak to that, I said that central column at the top is feeding into the direction of the company. So the way we look at this is quite different from the personal application, as you see, and it kind of ties into a storyline around how it would show up in an organization. So the 61 is an inspired idea, and then it's converted into a rational concept. And then that insight, yeah, it was sitting in inspiration, is coming to be more conceptualized now. So we're gonna have that insight and make it into a concept that's more efficient, and we're gonna simplify it, yes? So we can also make it efficient by explaining the plan in detail, how that's gonna happen. And then we explain now, because we are in the communication and action area as well, if you look at it from follow through with the storyline. Explain how the plan will make a contribution. And then in time, the idea becomes part of the identity of that group. And I will just make that more concrete with an example right now so people can resonate with it more. And then in the end, all of these ties in to the direction and the vision actually this company chose to follow, where they're going. Yeah, they're going towards a vision that they want to fulfill. They're on a direction to that, making that happen. And of course, we have to land it into concrete things around how that's going to be done. And the storyline I gave you, I don't want you to think about, okay, we're just going to create something, lots of different products, and we apply it to all of that. Yeah, it's like a higher level concept that the company will stand behind. So I just want to give, I said maybe giving an example would definitely make it more concrete. So let me try to run you like an example from Apple, so people can relate to it, right? So if you think about it, looking at the inspiration at the top, so when Steve Jobs, for example, envisioned that we have a device, so he was envisioning, or that organization was envisioning with him, let's say, a device that combined a phone, and there used to be iPods as music and connecting to the internet at the same time. Yeah, so that was the big inspiration that was there. And then the engineers, they started building that thing. So now we're turning the inspiration into some conceptual thing. Yes, they built a device with a touch screen, a simple user interface, and it didn't have a keyboard. It was different, right? But it became a concept. And then they put it into something structured. So think about all these things happening in the background. Of course, other things are also happening. The other power bases are also working, but I'm trying to isolate the story to run through this. Structuring the concept into a plan and making it efficient. You need a supply chain to produce that. You need a manufacturing process. You need a software system so it will run. But we can build a plan to make this inspiration into the concept into an actual product that we can produce and sell. So that was all set up in the background. And then finally, it was many, many years ago, maybe now 18, 20 years ago. It was around when my son was born. So 2007 or 8. Yes. So Job goes on stage and he says, this is how we're gonna, he explains the strategy first to the employees and then to the others. Yes, there's like a launch of an idea. Yeah, it doesn't have to be one product. But the iPhone is very central to Apple's identity. So I think it fits into this example. And then also like telling the audience or the people who are going to buy this, how is this product going to make a contribution? Yeah. So the product becoming your connection to the world. It's a way of communicating for you. It's going to contribute to your productivity, to the entertainment, listening to music. It's going to make a contribution, this insight that we have now in a concept. And then if you think about it, once Apple started selling the iPhone and making new versions of it, yes, making new improvements, in time, the iPhone became the identity, or it maps to the creative identity of being Apple. So this is how we can think of like somebody having an insight or an organization having an insight, and it kind of lands into a product. And then, of course, it is handed over to the 2 and the 14 because we have a vision that we're going to, and we're also going to have to invest into our organization, how we're going to develop it, how we're going to sell it. And Apple spends millions of dollars on doing that, how we're going to do that. So I think this was not any product, but special insight that becomes the group's identity type of example that can land this. And then, of course, with the vision of the company and the company's direction, all the other functionalities of that organization are working towards that vision. So it becomes like a central anchor for all the organization. to function. The employees are going to try to cater to that vision. Our rules and processes are going to help that with the, we were talking about the 2750, for example, the logical enforcement is also going to help. And then we're going to do more R&D and innovate, but it's going to feed into the 214 through the innovation. So it's all tied up, but if we isolated it, this might be as simple as it can be, an example to, so everyone can resonate better.
So I really like that example that you shared with, I mean, it's so concrete with, Steve Jobs standing on the stage and introducing the iPhone. And you could see how this, probably had to take place somewhere in the company and to sort of get this going. Can you give me a sense? Because when I look at this chart, it looks so clear. It seems like a business process. But the other thing I'm also wondering, which I'm really curious to hear about from you, is are these also people who fit certain roles, or is it somewhere both?
I think it's in between. So I like thinking of it. So we can take an individual's chart and see where they have activations within this because their design is being called within that organization to do these things. So that's why, like Sarah's example, I want to hear her story. If anything pops up in Sarah's head as an example of how she actually lived through such examples in her own life. So, but at the same time, for the OC16, I also like thinking of them like energies. When I think of an OC16, I like thinking of it like a multi-dimensional sphere with energy points in it. And to me, all these concepts are energy points within that organization that people gravitate towards. And sometimes they're pulled into it, sometimes they're out. But the company must have a vision. So maybe something very important that's bright and people are being pulled into it. Obviously, the people who have this in their design have more of a pull, if I can put it that way, to be working towards that side of the business. Yeah, so it's both.
Yeah. Sarah, when you look at this chart, this example, this process, like what comes up for you when you look at it?
So the first time I heard it, I was like, how do you know me so well? Like that's how do you know like the inner workings of my brain and my mechanics and how I move through life? Because it was what was so fascinating to me is going through this whole process. Like I could tell you in several different scenarios where maybe not as large as creating a product for Apple, but maybe on a smaller scale where that process is so fluid for me, that which is like it's like a weird concept to see how long that can take in an organization. Um, Whereas like if I'm really in the flow, it can kind of come together quickly and it's like I'm just always processing, right? So I may get an idea and I have the concept and I may spend a lot of time just individually trying to make it more efficient or talking about it with others, and so I was always naturally doing this before even being aware of these mechanics and how they work in a large organization. So it's just fascinating to me.
So Sarah, in the sense, and Banu already pointed this out. So the OC16 strength is the 214, but there's like this central column that goes right up through the body graph from the energy resource to identity to communication, conceptualization, inspiration. Sarah has all of the other strengths, the other three strengths, 1-8, 43, 23, 61, 24. Very unusual design. And this kind of visual process that Banu shared with us in the slide is really powerful, having this whole thing. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think you have either, Banu.
Oh, yes, it's the first time.
So I have like four people in my life that have the 14 to the 43, but they don't have the 61 or they don't have the 24,
Hmm.
and I've worked with one of them. And it was very interesting. And we also worked in a large organization. We were just so in the flow. We were always working through these processes together and almost could just read each other's mind, right? Like we had a vision, and it just came together. But what was really difficult is people had a hard time working with us because it, I'm guessing they didn't have those, similarities to us. And I think too, what can happen is like when I look at this process and like the roles that this type of person could play in an organization, like it lights me up. I love it. But when I look at some of the other areas, it's not for me. And so I think possibly, I don't know, Banu, if you've ever looked at that or what you could tell me, um, is because I'm so strong here, it just feels like I'm naturally pulled here and it's what I enjoy. But some of the other areas, like what kind of, like I'm not pulled there and I'm probably not good at it.
Yeah. So if we could, Mike, would you pull up Sarah's chart so we kind of can look at her chart? So yeah. Well, it's very obvious, right, in your design how this one really, really lights up in a lot of ways. Yeah. So just looking at sometimes it's what you could be pulled into just a little bit, but we would have to run your OC16 chart, which we should, Mike, before, let's add everybody's OC16 activations in your charts. So it's easier for us to look at things. But I would pay attention to where your core essence and grounding and balance is on both and which power bases they land into. And then, of course, the system calculates the percentage. It's very hard to look at it with the eye because you might have multiple activations. Those also contribute a little higher for that to come into things. Yeah, but I don't see you much gravitating into things. I would just look at those metrics in your chart to see if they were showing up for you. And when we work with clients, just spending time with them on specific power bases where they have activations and how is that serving them in their business life is a good thing. So Sarah obviously benefited a lot from having this in her design. And then if we found all the other power bases that she might be derailed in or pulled into, sometimes it helps you because you get experience. You're pulled into things and you're exposed to something new. So it might be serving you, just like my example of when I was pulled into things, but it gave me exposure to looking at different things. So for experience, it was good for me. But if it kept on derailing me from the job I was supposed to do and I couldn't do it anymore, then it's not serving me. So when we work with clients in business settings, just bringing awareness into how that's unfolding in their life and whether that's helping them or not is a great takeaway when we do personal work with people who work in organizations above 10 of people.
Yeah, thank you. Do we see this question from Asda? From all these transits, so in this particular OC16 kind of flow here, from all these transits, I only have two, the 43 and the 1. What does it say about me? So essentially, it sounds like Asda's asking, what if I don't have if I don't have that strength, nor a lot of those power bases, what does that mean?
Yeah, so when we kind of map somebody's design into the OC16 format, because we all have 26 definitions that fall into the chart, certain things will activate, certain power bases will activate more than some other charts. And we don't specifically look at strengths, we look at the traits when we're looking at the OC16. So Azadeh, if we ran the chart for you, you would still have activations in relevant power bases, and then we would look like which is the highest for you in terms of having activations. And if I was working with you, coaching you, I would start from the highest and start asking you questions around how that's showing up in your life. Yeah. So if we ran it for you, Azadeh, we would also have that. So if you're planning to come to the next sessions, Azadeh, send us your birth details. I know Azadeh and I had an interaction. She had written to me. It's been maybe a year ago. Her chart looks very similar to mine. So we don't have the four motors defined. Although we're different, obviously, but it looks like the functions are the same. That's why she had written to me, and that's how we had met. Azade, I'll try to pull up your OC16 chart if you're planning to come to the next classes, so we can answer these questions for you. But you would have a chart just like mine that shows your percentages and where it falls, where there might be more tendencies.
Anna, thank you so much. We really enjoy these sessions. We're learning so much. We really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
it's
Yeah,
fascinating. Thank you.
yeah. So moving forwards, we have one more BG5 Live for 2025. It's going to be Tuesday, December 9th. Then Vanessa and I and everyone, we're going to take a break for the holidays, and we'll be back in January 2026. So we look forward to seeing everyone in December and then in the new year. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a
Thank you.
good week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.